And I went, oh, so brother and sister are boning. And she was like, what? The author. So what? What? No, what? And everybody's like, oh my God, I'm so glad you said that. That's exactly what I thought they were doing. And like, yeah, look at like this is going to make every single person who reads this think, or at least the majority of them
Yeah.
think that these two are boning. And she's like, no, no. She was mortified. And I'm like, whether you meant to do it or not, that is what the story
That's
does.
that's what's on.
So
Yeah, and that's what I call the unintended fee.
yeah.
And you do need to be cognizant.
Well,
You
you
might
won't be.
not mean to put this in the book.
Right. Releasing your inner dragon. All right, Marie. So let's start off with the big question. What is a climax?
Well, it's when a boy author and a girl author. No, I'm kidding.
No, no, keep going. I really don't know. I have no idea what this is.
A climax is when your protagonists overcome the theme, and by overcoming the theme, they also they are then able to overcome the conflict, beat the bad guy, and achieve victory in their endeavors in this novel.
So
It
that's a
is
very
the
highbrow answer. Uh,
moment.
I mean, no, it's 100%. You know, we talk about theme a lot, and that is what it is. It's your character starting on the wrong side of the theme and then finally realizing that they're on the wrong side of the theme and shifting to the right side to beat it. But can we expand upon that? Can we break it
100%.
down for us layman people who aren't, quite as highbrow as you literary types are?
Um, sure. So basically, let's take an example from um, Tolkien. Let's talk
Okay.
about Tolkien. So in Lord of the Rings, Frodo has carried this ring all the way into the cavern. And the climax there is when he doesn't throw it in. And then there's the fight with Golem. And then I can't remember how it goes in the book exactly. But in the
So it's fun.
movie,
It's funny that you picked this one because you're going to get me in trouble. And no, we did not plan this. I There's two endings, there's two climaxes
yes.
to the two most money-making things ever that I think are the dumbest, worst endings ever. And that is Lord of the Rings
Mm.
and Star Wars, the trilogy, the original trilogy.
You're
Because
gonna you're gonna have to hear me out on the Lord of the Rings one, but let me finish the thing
okay,
first.
go ahead.
In my head, and I mean it's been a while since I've rewatched the movie and even longer since I've reread the book. So bear with me if I get this wrong, you can correct me in the comments. But in my head, Sam does something in that moment where Golem and Frodo are struggling over the ring. And it is by Sam's actions that Golem gets thrown over.
Now, I think Frodo goes into the cavern alone in both the book and the movie.
But
I definitely know in the movie he goes in alone, but I'm 99.9% sure he goes in alone in the book as well. That Sam is out
okay.
of the picture. So here's the problem that I have with it. So in the first Star Wars movie, A New Hope, because this is how the Star Wars trilogy ends and Lord of the Rings ends. So just think about Star Wars A New Hope. So Luke Skywalker's in the trenches. He is supposed to launch his torpedo down the air chute and blow up the Death Star. But Darth Vader is on his tail, and Darth Vader is going to kill him. There's nothing he can do about it. And then the rescue from without, Han Solo, comes in and shoots Darth Vader in the butt and sends him on the way. And then Han Solo says, "Get out of my way, kid," and pushes Luke out of the way. And then he uses the Millennium Falcon to shoot a torpedo into the air shaft and blows up the Death Star and says, "Great, let's go home now." That's the rescue from without actually overcoming the story. That is bad. But because it didn't happen that way, obviously. But that is what they did in Lord of the Rings and in the full trilogy. So in Lord of the Rings, Frodo goes to the edge of the cliff. He takes the ring and he's going to throw it in, and then he fails. He goes, you know what? This is a lot of power. I'm keeping it for myself. And he starts to leave. And then Gollum attacks him because Gollum's like, I want the ring. And then Gollum bites the ring off and his finger and falls into the lava. Frodo doesn't push him into lava, he just falls into the lava. So that's the rescue from now. Had they had Gollum attack, and then either Frodo pushes him into the lava or just beats him down, either way, it's fine. And then had Frodo go, oh crap, I almost let the ring beat me, and then had Frodo decide to throw the ring in, that would have been Frodo overcoming the plot. But in both the book and the movie, Gollum takes that decision away from Luke. And Gollum, the rescue from without, overcomes the story. Same thing in Star Wars. Luke Skywalker goes through this entire trilogy. He gets to the end. You know, he's there with the Emperor. He says, I'm not going to fight you. You know, I'm going to change my father. The Emperor starts killing him. Great, that's fine. But then Darth Vader kills the Emperor. Darth Vader should have been the rescue from without. Darth Vader should have stepped in the way of the lightning just like he did, gotten his butt fried, given Luke enough time to recover, chop off the Emperor's head, and then they could have had the moment with Darth Vader and him with take off my helmet and I'm dying and I want to see you with my own eyes and all that. But no, they had Darth Vader, the rescue from without, do the story. So, like, I think those are bad climaxes. I mean, we were going to save bad climaxes for later, but you just pulled out Lord of the Rings out of the jump. And that's going to I know I'm going to get a lot of hate for that. And that's fine. Go ahead and fill up the comments with hate and like, oh, Lord of the Rings, you're just jealous. And like, no, it's still the rescue. Like, the facts don't change. Gollum should have been the rescue from without. It would have made the story so much stronger if Frodo had made the climax, had done the decision to do it. Same thing with Star Wars. Luke should have beat the Emperor. He was the hero. He's the guy I've been following the whole time, not Darth Vader. And I'm not following Gollum.
So I will speak in defense of Star Wars because I actually think that I'm not sure that they entirely pulled it off, but I think what they were going for with our boy Luke is that his overcome is when he won't fight. I think that is the decision not to fight is him choosing the Jedi way. I think that is what Lucas was trying for.
So that's interesting. I thought you were going. So I've had this discussion with many a Star Wars fan, and you started the argument exactly the way they all do, and I think it's the dumbest argument ever. But as always, you impress me and come out of nowhere with something completely different, which is one of the reasons why I love hanging out with you so much. So normally the argument is, and this is where I thought you were going. No. That was the end of Darth Vader's story where he started off good and then went to the dark side and then came up, and this is him being good, and he's the real story. I'm like, the reason why I think that's so stupid is Lucas had no idea of any of that. He hadn't even thought about those first three movies. They weren't written. He might have had some concepts or some ideas, but no, he did not know where that was going. He just screwed up. So that's a dumb argument. But what you just said, now that's not a dumb argument. That is actually, kind of interesting. The other thing they say that they argue is they go, well, he's the hero because he saved his son. I'm like, Hitler would have saved his son. That doesn't make you a good person.
I don't. One, Darth Vader is not the hero of 4, 5, and 6.
Right.
He is the antagonist. And yes, the fact that he switches at the end is supposed to be a redemption arc of sorts. I will argue high and low that it is not a redemption arc.
Now, he saves his child out of selfishness.
Yes and no. So I don't like. I feel that there was a hint of a redemption arc, but And it might have been fine if we never got movies 1, 2, and 3. But in movie 3, he killed the kids.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, that's it.
that needs a lot of redeeming.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, that and to me, you can't redeem that. You slaughter an orphan, an entire school of children. There's no redeeming you. You're never going to be a hero to me. You are a piece
yeah,
of garbage.
yeah. I would struggle with that one as well.
Yeah. So, but no, the way you went, that's interesting. And that actually is the first argument that I've been given on this. And you're right, he failed miserably because you're stretching to put that into that context.
I'm not though, because he does say, "I won't fight you, father," and he puts the sword down, and it is there.
Well,
But the
the
reason
counter
the reason
argument,
why it's not there in blazing neon lights for all to see is because the Jedi code is not sufficiently explored.
right. But
That's
here's
that's
my
the thing.
counter argument, because here's
Yeah.
what I actually think they were trying to do. Like I said, what you said was interesting, but what I think they
Mm,
were trying to do was he was there to save his father from the dark side, and therefore that's how he could defeat the dark side. So when he said, "I'm not going to fight you," and he allowed himself to be attacked by the Emperor, I think he's allowing his father to switch sides. Once
mm,
he's accomplished that, I don't think he had any problem killing the Emperor. I mean, he killed bunches of other people. So I don't think it's that. I think it was more for, let me show you, father, look at me and let me show you what you should have done. Let me show you the person you should have been. And then
mm,
he displayed that, sacrificed himself. The father realized this. He switches sides. But again, he should have just gotten the crap shocked out of him. And then Luke chops the Emperor's head off and saves his father. And then says, see, you did it. You did what you should have done. You switched sides. You now understand. And oh, it's so sad because now I get to watch you die. But at least you die understanding where you should have been, as opposed to just being this soulless, you know, cretin.
So the reason why and I hear you, and I can see where you're coming from, but the reason why I feel that it is more about like him rejecting that kind of moment of violence is also because the emperor gets him to fail by threatening his sister, and then suddenly Luke produces the lightsaber and turns to violence.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's meant to show, like, I think that in that conflict, in order to succeed, Luke had to reject violence
Right.
in that moment.
Yeah. No, I agree with all that. The
Yeah.
difference is all the elements of him saving his father and the way I'm talking about are there in the story. For your way to work, which actually would have been just as good, we would have had to add, we would have had to definitely beef up the Jedi code, and there's things that they completely missed to make that story elements work at the end.
Yes.
Everything you need, if you change nothing in that movie except for let Darth Vader just get shocked and almost die, and then Luke chop the Emperor's head off and save him, and you have to change nothing in that movie. Nothing. It's all there. And then I think the audience consumes, oh, I see what he was doing. He was there trying to, at least at the end of his life, give his father the opportunity to redeem himself.
Yeah.
Does it make up for everything his father did? No, which is why he deserves to die, which he
Yeah.
does. But at least his son was like, no, I don't want my father to die, because if I fight him, I'm going to kill him and he's just going to die a piece of garbage. I
Mm,
want to I want to make him not die a complete villain. All those elements are there.
mm,
They're all already in the story. And so that's why I think they failed miserably when they let Darth Vader kill the Emperor, because he's the rescue from without for Luke's story. But anyway, it's just funny that you
yeah.
picked Lord of the Rings, because again, I feel the same way about the Gollum thing.
Yeah.
How powerful would it have been if he shakes Gollum off and again either throws him in the lava or beats him down? He doesn't have to kill him, he can just beat him down, and then go, holy crap, I almost just did what Boromir did. I almost fell to the ring just like Boromir did. Oh, I can't do that. No, 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 let's get rid of this. Like, and then he has made the decision to overcome the story. He has he's fought off the power of the ring, the evil of the ring, and shucked it away. Even though he's shucking away fame and power and glory and all of that, he understands what that life is going to bring him. And he almost felt it. I just think that's so much more powerful than to have the rescue from without come in. And because again, to me, it's exactly as if Han Solo had then said, "Get out of the way, kid. I got this."
So
The
I
distance.
will tell you why I think that the Lord of the Rings is still a powerful ending.
Oh, it is. I mean, it's a great
No, no,
story.
no, but I'll tell you why I think it's still a powerful ending in the context of Tolkien's thematic elements, right? So in Tolkien ultimately was an optimist. Yeah? Despite the wars, despite everything he'd been through, he was an optimist. To him, and he was a deeply religious person.
Mm-hmm.
To him, there was a thread of optimism, there was always hope. And so, when Frodo outright fails out there, the world steps in. And remember, it's written in Omniscient. The world steps in and helps him over the finish line. Right?
But
It
see,
is a
that's where we differ because I don't think it helped him over the finish line. I think it took the baton from him and then ran across the finish line itself, and it left
sure,
him lying
but he
on the
had failed.
racetrack.
No, he had failed. He had
Exactly.
outright failed.
Well, let's use this as a great thought exercise to talk about like the difference between a tragedy and a feel-good story. So we can differ on this, and other people can talk about it in the comments and say I agree or disagree or
Yeah.
whatever, or come up with your own whatevers. But so if we're writing a tragedy, if we want to show that, then I would take it a step further. I would have Frodo fail, keep the ring, and then show the badness that happened because of that.
But he wasn't writing a tragedy.
No, I know. I'm saying, but then the audience could understand. They would consume, oh, yeah, no, you don't want to fall to power. Having power accidentally taken from you to save you from its evil, I just don't think has a good impact as a climax. And again, that's what we're talking about here is climaxes. So I think
So,
it's a weaker version of what you could have done. Either have him make the realization that he
right.
almost fell and destroy it, or have him really fail. I mean, we have the whole trip back to the Shire. That whole thing could be used to show that Frodo screwed up. Frodo
So
kept the ring. He comes
yeah.
back. He's a dick. He enslaves his people. Like, and then somebody poisons him. Some little hobbit girl at the bar poisons him, and he dies choking on his own vomit. Like, okay,
So,
yeah, that's what you get, you evil twerp, for falling to the ring.
so I hear you, but I'm speaking from the perspective of Tolkien, the writer, right?
Right,
Tolkien, who loved fairy tales.
right.
It is a very fairy tale kind of thing for
It is.
the world to step in and help you over the line. I think it is also one of the reasons, like Tolkien famously did not like Dune, right? So they sent him Dune for him to read
Oh,
and
dude.
deliver, and he was like,
Wait,
no. He was like, no.
wait. And the reason why I was just kind of stunned because I didn't understand, I thought you said, well, like Tolkien famously didn't like you.
No, no,
I
Dune,
was like,
Dune.
I never met the
And I
man.
kept
He was
talking
dead.
Dune,
Like what? That's why I had that stunned look on my
Dune.
face. I was like, where are you going with this? Why does
So,
Tolkien famously hate me? What did I ever do to him other than trash his ending just now?
so Tolkien famously didn't like Dune, and
Right.
I think the reason why he didn't like Dune, besides Dune's like take on religion, which is that it's manipulative, used to control people, and not real, um, which obviously clashed with Tolkien's faith, is I think that Dune is a tragedy.
Mhm.
And if you've only ever read the first book, you don't know that.
No,
Because the first book feels like a normal story.
it's a bait
And
and
the
switch.
problem is that when Herbert got the feedback that people were like taking this as a normal story with Paul Atreides as the hero, he was like, okay, you guys missed the point. Let me make it blatant for you, and wrote Dune Messiah.
Yeah.
Um, And there you realize that Paul has done exactly that. He fell in full. He is the villain.
Yeah.
It's a tragedy. And
But it's also why I never finished doing Messiah.
100%, and I understand that, but I'm saying, like, that is what Herbert was writing. And I guess it also very clearly for me illustrates the difference between these two writers and their approaches,
Mm-hmm.
right? Tolkien optimistically, thematically believed in a good world. Tolkien believed the world would help you over the end. Herbert did not. Herbert believed the world was man-made and everybody in power is a douche nozzle.
And the truth is somewhere between those two. But yeah, that's why Tolkien and Lewis hung out together. And
Yeah,
I don't know if Golding and Herbert ever hung out together, but they definitely should have, because they were definitely of like minds.
soulmates, those
Yeah,
two.
they should have been at a, some goth bar just hating on the life and the world and everything else. So yeah, but that, like I said, we've actually kind of covered a lot of the different topics with this. But basically, to finish up this first topic, just like you said, the climax, and it also depends on what you're trying to do. There's external story arcs, there's internal story arcs, there's different ways to do it in different genres and stuff like that, which we'll talk about here in a second. But um, if you're telling a true story where you're a thematically driven story, then it is your character starting on the wrong side of the theme, going through this trial and tribulation where the story is trying to show them you're on the wrong side of the theme, you're making wrong decisions, this is not how to live. Maybe we're proving that racism is bad, so the character's racist. Maybe we're proving that overprotective parent is bad, so the character's an overprotective parent. Maybe we're trying to prove that you're Jesus Christ and he's just doesn't believe he's Jesus Christ. Whatever we're trying to prove, they always start on the opposite side. They go through the adventure of the story's trying to show them, dude, look, all these problems are happening because you're not thinking right. You're just looking at the world wrong. And so that at the end, when we do finally have the actual climax, not the faux climax, which happens before it, which we'll talk about in a second, but the actual climax, they go, oh, if I just wasn't that way and I was this way instead, at the end of Star Wars: A New Hope, the question is, should you rely on technology to save you, or should you rely on faith to save you? And so, we have all these scenes where sometimes faith, sometimes technology, we have Obi-Wan, it's faith, and Han Solo's technology, and Darth Vader, who's faith, and the Empire, who's technology, and we have all this conflict back and forth. And at the end of the day, he's in the trench, and Obi-Wan's like, use the Force, use faith, believe in a power greater than yourself. And Princess Leia going, use your targeting computer. And then he has to make a decision. And that's that climax. He goes, oh, crap. We've been using technology to fight this Death Star, and everyone is dead. Everyone but me is dead who's been using technology. Obviously, technology is not the answer. I need to believe in a greater power. I need to believe in something bigger than myself. And so he turns the targeting computer off, trusts in a power that he cannot see, that he just has to have faith that exists, and he blows up the Death Star. It saves his life. So that's really the quintessential definition of a climax. That's when the audience stands up and cheers. That's when the characters taken all the lessons that they've learned on this journey, what they had before the journey started, and combine it with what they learned during the journey of it, and they've done it. And the audience is like, yeah. And this is when, Neo, after he gets killed and shot 6 times in the chest and he's dead, he realizes, oh wait, I guess I am Jesus Christ. And he comes back to life. And it's just that moment that they switch. And it's one of the reasons why, and I've said this before, I have spent my entire career trying to figure out every story I write. I've tried to figure out how to make the climax long, make it last. Because it always is just like, and it's just there. It's at the end. So like sex. You spend 30 minutes dealing with it, and then like 3 seconds. It's like, and it's over. It's like time to go to sleep. So I've looked for that. How do you extend? And you just really, I've never figured it out. Maybe I'm just not smart enough, but because it's that moment. It's the moment where the character moves from the wrong side of the theme to the right side of the theme. And that movement, that transformation, is what makes the audience go, yeah, yeah, if you had just had that way of thinking, if you had just done that to begin with, none of this stuff would have happened to you. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, and that's the climax. So when should it happen? That's kind of an obvious question, but
Close to the end of your book, preferably.
ideally.
Ideally. Although that being said, like I had 2 points within my book, within the first book in Hidden Blade, because I had a moment of conflict where it looks like the climax because this is what the character's been working towards, and he achieves his goal and then fails, and then the actual climax is somewhat later, but like substantially later.
Then I would argue that that first one isn't really a climax. It's just him getting his goals and realizing that's not what his story was about. More
Yeah,
than
yeah,
that, because
yeah,
there,
yeah.
and I try, like, what is it about this episode that I'm just going to be Debbie Downer the entire freaking thing? Because there is one, I'm going to trash another author and another story that pissed me off because of the ending. And that's Joe Abercrombie's First Law series. So the whole book series had come out before I read it. Because it just didn't seem like my thing. I'm the F-bomb in fantasy just doesn't scream fantasy to me. And there's like the F-bomb in every third sentence in that book. And I don't know, there were just some things about it that just didn't attract me. But my friends kept talking to me about it, and they would go, "Oh my goodness, there's no climax in this trilogy. Like, I can't believe it. Like, it's so," I'm like, there's no way. There's no way a major publisher would put out a book with no climax. Actually, let me go ahead and trash another one. And then I read Abraham Lincoln Vampire Slayer. Anyway, so I'm like,
That
there's no
doesn't
way.
count.
There's no way they would do a trilogy and it not have a climax. And so I read it. And it does have a climax. It has a climax at the end, about 1/3 of the way into the third book. We finish. Adventure's finished. They move to the right side of the theme. They learn their lessons. It's a happy ending, and that's it. The book ends. It's over. The trilogy ends 1/3 of the way through book 3. And where he failed, because that's the thing. They said not only is there no climax, every character is just ruined at the end of it. Every character's a tragedy. And that's where he failed, in my opinion, because then he does, just like Tolkien did, a long return with going back to the Shire and all that other stuff. The rest of his book is the return. And he goes back, and the love interests that we were hoping to get together, they do get together, and it's like so good. And then in a fit of rage, she murders him and goes to jail and is then, hung for murder. And the king, the guy that was trying to become the king becomes the king, and it's a happy ending. But then we find out that he has no power, and he's literally just a puppet to the state, and they force him to do all sorts of things that he doesn't want to do. And I don't remember what happened to everyone else, but everyone had a tragic ending like that. But it's not a tragedy. So a tragedy is where something bad happens, but the audience gets that they shouldn't have done that. So, like the Pied Piper, everyone knows if you had just met your promises and not been greedy, your kids wouldn't have died. The King Midas, everyone understands that if you just be satisfied with the wealth that you have, and you wouldn't have murdered your daughter. Like, we get that it's a tragedy, but we get why we still consume the message. There's nothing to consume in those tragedies. It's just watching characters that you love just be reamed, and it was bad. It was just bad. And even though it has a huge fan base, I know most of the people that I know, that's why they were telling me to read it, because they were so, I mean, it was definitely the, "Oh my God, that's horribly tasting. Taste that." Like, that's literally what it was. It was like, "This is one of the worst books I've ever read. You need to read it." So I don't know why I read it, but it was very sad that they allowed that to be the book that they produced to go out there.
So I don't know. So uh, I have never read past the Blade itself. I read the first book and the first, and for whatever reason, I never picked up book 2. I think I think I picked up the Blade itself, and then I couldn't get hold of book two, or the series hadn't completed yet, or whatever. And then by the time book two came out, I was busy with other stuff, and I couldn't remember book one. And so I have never actually read the endings of
And
the trilogy. And
and I
now
can
I kind of like, because I've heard a lot about, the first Law trilogy, and they classify Abercrombie as grim dark.
mhm,
And I've come to the realization that while I enjoy dark fantasy, I'm not huge on grimdark.
right. Yeah, that's why I consider myself a dark fantasy writer or a tragic fantasy writer, but I don't consider myself a grim dark.
Yeah,
And
because
that's why I said it's just not
grimdark
my
is
cup of tea.
so
And
gritty. It's about grittiness and reality, and like I like a little bit more.
yeah,
Um, yeah,
yeah, a
a
little bit more fantasy in my fantasy.
little bit more
Yeah,
fantasy in my life.
if the whole series hadn't been out already, I would have probably done the same thing. I would have read the first book and then been like, meh.
Yeah,
Um, but I actually bought, because again, this was a huge discussion in my circle,
mm,
and so I just went to the bookstore and I just bought all three.
yeah,
So, because I'm like, well, I got to read it because I'm not going to know, I'm not going to be having this discussion with my peeps until I get to the end. So why would just
yeah,
buy one book? I'm just gonna, they're all here, just buy them all and just go.
yeah.
Yeah, that was back way before Amazon, way before Amazon existed. But, uh, but yeah, it was it. That to me is the quintessential um cautionary tale of not having your climax toward the end. I mean, yes, you
Mm,
can have a return, and I think the longest you can do is like what Tolkien did with his return, where we do the climax and then we go all the way back to Shire, but that still ends in a good
yeah,
way, as opposed to not.
short time, but yes, it ends.
Yeah. That was the funniest thing to me. I could, when I was watching the final movie in the theaters, you could tell who was had read the novels and who hadn't.
Yeah,
Because the movie ends, fades to black, it's over, and half the audience stood up. And then the movie comes back on and they all sit back down. And then we have another thing. And then it ends and it fades to black. Movie's over, credits are about to roll, half the audience stands up. And then the movie comes back on and everybody sits back down. And then again, it happens. The movie's over. Everything's resolved. Fade to black. Everyone stand. Half the people stand up, and then they're like, "Nope, we're not done." So I thought that was hilarious that they did, and they had to have done. Peter Jackson had to have thought about that. Like, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna fade to black, like the credits are about to roll. Like this is gonna be ended. This story, and then we're gonna give it a count of two, and then we're gonna just come back on with the next story. He had to think about it like that. He had to be like, "This is gonna be so funny." Like you can't do that
that's
accident.
exactly what he did. Let's be
It
honest, it is exactly what he did.
had to be. But I picked up on it because I saw it in the theater, the weekend that it opened up. So it was hilarious to me. That was one of the things I was laughing about when I walked out. I was like, you could tell who didn't read the novels.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was great.
So, does genre affect your climax? What do you think?
Yes and no. No, in the way of, in my mind, there's only two real ways to have a climax, either a tragedy or a feel good. Yes, in the kind of what we're doing. And actually, I probably should have asked this question to you because I think you were the one that gave me the vast majority of this, answer. Because when I read the question, I was like, well, no. But technically, it does a little bit because you have something like, the things that we've been talking about here, where you have a villain, you have an actual conflict that we're trying to overcome. But then you look at, a story like romance, where sure, there's some romances out there where there's the third party that's trying to do whatever. But for the most part, it's about the romance.
Yeah, yeah,
It still has the climax. It still has the, oh, look, they got together and they overcame all of these things that should keep them apart. But you look at like Miss Congeniality. Yeah, okay. There's somebody trying to blow up a beauty pageant with a bomb. Okay, great. We're gonna thwart that. And
that's
that
not the
is an
story.
overcome. But
Yeah,
the overcome is her getting in touch with her feminine side and not being 100% dude, and understanding that her loneliness and her unhappiness stems from the fact that she's 100% dude at the beginning of that movie, and that she
yeah,
should be, it's okay to also have some feminine side to you. Every man and every woman should have both masculine sides and feminine sides. It makes us well-rounded people. And so that's the thing it was kind of showing. So that's the real overcome, is her then realizing that. And they don't, if I remember correctly, they don't actually have a hookup in that movie. It's been a while since I've seen it, but you know that she's now understanding that this is what she does want to eventually do. Or do they have a hookup moment in that movie? It's been too long for me for Miscongeniality.
It's been years.
Yeah, I think at the end of it, she's just like, you just know she's open, because I think maybe they even say like we should go on a date sometime or something like that.
Yeah,
But I don't think it actually ends with them like
but she's ready for.
right, right. She's
Yeah,
the type of person that we hope that she would become, a complete human being as opposed
yeah,
to a one-sided, lopsided human being.
yeah,
And so, yeah, I mean, that's so genre, it doesn't affect it as in you're still either going to have a tragedy where the audience is going to consume the message because they're going to go, oh, you shouldn't have done that. Like if I
yeah.
was there, I'd do the exact opposite of that because that's bad. Or you have the feel good ending where it's like, yeah, that's what I was hoping you'd do. You blew up that Death Star, you got the guy, you got the girl, you whatever. Um, and so I think those are genre, you know, exempt. But it
I
comes down to that.
yeah.
Well, it comes down to the Abercrombie thing that I was just talking about. That doesn't happen. We get the good feel ending, but then we have two-thirds of a novel that isn't, it's tragic, but it's not a tragedy. There's nothing at the end of that where I go, oh, okay, yeah, no, if I would have, if the character would have just chosen this other thing, it would have been better for them. So it's the other thing that the story's trying to
Yeah.
prove, but that isn't there. It's just 400 pages of
So I'll tell you what
stall.
fans of I'll tell you what fans of First Law say, because this is sometimes a debated topic in some of the Reddit forums and so on that I belong to. And I'll tell you what they say. They say that, oh, but that just shows like the gritty harshness of real life. It like takes me so deep. And I'm like, okay, 100%. If you love that in the genre, you are a grimdark fan, go forth.
There's a reason why
100%.
there's genres for everything.
But that's not me.
Right. Right. And that's not the mass majority of people. There's a bunch of there are hundreds of first law series out there that you will never read and never hear about and never exist because it's harder for that to find an audience.
So
And
I've
it's
been running a massive survey for the past 2 weeks. And I've gotten 1,000 responses to, because I tossed it onto Facebook and paid for some advertising to get it in front of like fantasy readers and stuff like that. And of the genres, I put both grimdark and dark fantasy onto it. Over 60% of people said yes to dark fantasy and no to grimdark. Grimdark is down at 30%. So just so you know, like there is nothing wrong with writing for grimdark, but understand that it is a niche.
yeah. I mean, Dino porn has fans. It's just not many.
Yeah,
It's a tiny little genre that has, I'm sure a very loyal community.
yeah,
But so there's nothing, we're not dogging on them. We're not saying don't
yeah.
do these things. We're just saying from a business standpoint, just understand where you're going to sit.
And obviously, Abercrombie has been massively successful in the grimdark arena, but for every Abercrombie, there are like 100 authors who will never be
Right.
anywhere close to that
It,
successful.
you know,
And he was successful because he is actually a competent writer as
oh,
well.
he's a solid writer. Like I will
Yeah,
never say anything. His writing was great.
yeah,
Um,
like,
it's the story that
yeah,
hit me.
yeah. The story didn't work for me, but he writes good prose and
Right.
characters and everything else. Like,
Right. And this, the whole size of the fish and the size of the pond analogy does work. So
yeah,
yes, if you're a larger fish in a smaller pond, you can actually do much better than being, not so large of a fish out in the ocean.
yeah,
But the flip side to that is if there is a whale in the pond, then they're going to eat everything.
yes,
And so it is much harder to, so yes, grimdark is a much more niche market. And you go, oh,
yeah,
well, then that means there's so much. Yeah, but there's whales in that market. and Abercrombie's not the only one.
Yeah.
So it's when you're just starting out, I don't know if that's the right business decision to go, oh, I'm going to go after this niche market because, whatever, because you
Yeah.
are competing. I mean, that's the crappy thing from a business standpoint. I'm competing against the Iliad for readership. That book's thousands of years old, and I'm still competing against it because you compete against everything because people can only read so much. And when we have what 800,000 new books hitting the market every year right now,
Yeah.
that is a lot of competition that you have to cut through. Now, I do want to say this is off the topic of Climax, but I do hate that writers hate on other writers because they think of the competition side of it. Yes, we are competing for attention from readers. However, we're not competing with other authors. If just because someone's a fan of mine doesn't mean they're not a fan of Maurice. Like it's not that there's a set pie. It's
Yeah.
noise. It's cutting through the noise. Everything is name recognition. So, why did me and Marie start this podcast 4 years ago? One, because we enjoy hanging out together and we like talking writing, and that's really fun. But two, it's one more avenue to cut through the
The
white
noise.
noise.
Yeah.
So it's just another way to hopefully get our names recognized so that people are like, oh, I've heard this person before. Let me check out their stuff.
Yeah.
So that's what you're competing against. You're not competing against me. That's not
I really, there's been a couple of scandals recently in the author world of like authors trashing other authors, and like not like this where we've now been going like, I don't like this ending or that ending, but like
right.
trashing, and that's not cool.
No,
Like, don't do it.
no. I mean, there's now in some markets, because I do dabble in the tie-in market, there are only so many jobs. And so,
Mm.
yeah, in those instances, I am more competing directly with another author, but it's more as an employee. We're both
Yeah.
hunting for the same position. But for fans, it isn't a pie. It's an unlimited pie. And just because they eat a piece of my store, my pie, doesn't mean they can't eat a piece of your pie and their
Yeah.
pie. And like no one buys one book. Like, yes, there is a limit. I mean, I know a guy who reads a book a day. I don't think he actually remembers any of it. I don't think it impacts him. I don't think anything like that, but he reads a book a day. And I'm talking about a fiction book. But that's an
Yeah.
insane number. Most are, 10, 15, 20 books a year, 30 books
Yeah.
a year, whatever. And so that's the pie that's there, but it's almost unlimited. So I just want to say that even though we are competing against the white noise of stuff that's
Yeah.
out there, we're not competing against each other.
But let's get back to Climax. What do you think I think this is going to be an interesting discussion. What do you think the breaking point is, or the all hope is lost moment, and how does it affect the climax?
So for me, and this is one of the differences between me and you kind of both see the breaking point and the all hope is lost was kind of the same. And I think they could be very different. They are often also the same.
Mm.
So I don't know. So I think we should discuss this I don't think there is a defined definition that anybody really knows. It's just there's a bunch of ways to kind of think about this topic. So
Yeah.
the character breaking point to me, and this is one way to look at it, is what is the moment where the character just can no longer not go against the climax? Like it's done so much damage to them. They've lost so much. They've either lost friends or they've lost things or they've lost, hope or whatever. And it's sometimes referred to as the dark night of the soul or whatever. So it's that moment where they just can't go. So like, let's use the Matrix because I think this would be a great because you can show a different way to look at this. And
Mm.
again, it's just how you look at this topic. So for me, the breaking point for Neo is after he gets back after the fight with Agent Smith in the subway, and he gets back and he has to come to terms with the fact that Morpheus has now been captured and is going to die, and he can't take the fact that Morpheus is going to die believing that Neo is Jesus Christ when Neo knows he's not because the Oracle told him he's not. And so to me, the breaking point of that moment is then. It's like, I can't. I'm worthless. Like, yes, I'm going to die going to save him, but he has to be saved. He's important. I'm not. And so he's just broken at that point. And then the all hope is lost moment for me is when he's saved, he rescued Morpheus. He's trying to get out. He makes it back to the phone, and Agent Smith is waiting on him and shoots him 6 times in the chest, and he dies. So now all hope is lost. But I don't feel, to me, that is the breaking point of the character. Although you see it differently, and it's just a different way to look at it.
So I think that Neo's breaking point is in that moment when Agent Smith shoots him. I think it is in the realization as he is staring down that barrel that he is going to die. Everything up until then, he could still have been the one.
Mm-hmm.
Even when he's going like, I've got to rescue Morpheus, he's wrong, I'm not the one, there is still doubt, right? He could still be the one. And then he's staring at the barrel of a gun and a bullet's coming toward him and he's not fast enough to dodge and it hits him in the chest and he is dying. And that, I think, is the point where he goes, I am not the one, and he gives up and dies. He literally, in that moment, fails.
And then Trinity says,
Yeah.
I know that I'm the one because the Oracle said I'd fall in love with you and that would make me the one. So she jacks into the Matrix, she kills the agents, and then she releases the world from control of the androids.
So Trinity's breaking point is also in that moment because she, in that moment, realizes that she should have told Neo about her prophecy. She should have told him that she loves him, and because she loves him, he is the one, because she would fall in love. But then she tells that to his, corpse, and he resurrects and kills Edmund.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that
the joke is that in Neo's story, Trinity is the rescue from without. She's the Han Solo, the I shot Darth Vader off your tail. So that's her rescue from without, which is the you have to be. Like, I know you think you're dead. I know it. I get it.
Yeah.
But you're not, because you're Jesus, because I love you and I was told I would love Jesus. So you're it. You're up, kid. My favorite rescue from without combo is in Finding Nemo and the Marlin story arc, because the movie's called Finding Nemo and he never finds Nemo. Like, he doesn't rescue Nemo. So the rescue from without, so the all hope is lost moment is when Marlin gets to the city and goes, oh, right, I'm a fish. I can't do this. And the rescue from without is Nemo swimming up and going, hey, Dad, I rescued myself. Because he has to, because his story is a coming of age story. So if Marlin had rescued him, it would have ruined a coming of age story. So Nemo has to rescue himself. And then he comes out. And why is that a rescue without? Because that's not the conflict. Marlin's conflict is not rescuing Nemo. Marlin's conflict is that he's the wrong type of parent. And so we need Nemo back in the story so that then Dory can get caught in the net. Nemo can say, look, I know you're an overprotective idiot, but I am not really in danger if I go save your friend. I can do it. I did this stuff, and I now know, like, it's safe for me to do this. You just have to stop being an overprotective parent. And so we need Nemo in Marlin's story for him to have his overcome. But Nemo, the person he's supposed to be rescuing, is actually his rescue from without, which I think is freaking hilarious from a structural standpoint, because you think the whole time, no, the overcome is saving Nemo. No, that's not the overcome. So, like, I love Finding Nemo so much from a structural standpoint and from a just a craft of writing standpoint. It's brilliant in so many different ways. But yeah, so it depends on how you want to look at what is the character breaking moment. It to me, it all goes back to, so I'm actually producing a new YouTube show called Idea to Novel and Everything in Between, where me and a friend of mine who's never really written we're gonna spend like 2 years writing a novel, and we're going through every step of the way. So I've got all these exercises, and we haven't launched it yet, and I don't know when we're going to launch it. It'll be months before we actually launch this, but we're recording every week. And we're at the stage now where I'm doing tent polling with him. So I, talked about the everyman moment, the inciting incident, the point of no return, and blah, blah, blah. And so the inciting incident, point of no return, I talk about and I go through and I say, look, a lot of times these are the same. So like in Finding Nemo, the inciting incident is Nemo gets kidnapped. The point of no
Yeah.
return is Nemo's kidnapped. Like he can't not go after him. Like that's it.
Yeah.
That's the way it is. But in the Matrix, they're not together. The
Yes.
inciting incident is follow the white rabbit, go talk to
Yes.
Trinity, Morpheus is real. But you can go back to work if you want, and he does.
Yeah.
Just like in Star Wars, the inciting incident is meeting old Ben and getting the magic sword, but he goes back home. And then the point of no return in the Matrix is, do you want the red pill or the blue pill?
Yeah.
And the point of no return in Star Wars is the next scene, which is, oh yeah, no, the Empire killed your family, and they're going to kill you now. You need to run. Like there is no turning back now. So in story structure, you can combine them and think of them as one thing, but also having the ability to separate them can be pretty powerful. And that's the reason why, to bring it back to here, it's one of the reasons why I like to think of the character breaking point and the all hope is lost moment separately, even though a lot of times they're stacked on top of each other, the same moment. Because with Trinity, I 100% agree with you. Trinity's breaking moment and her all hope is lost moment is Neo's death.
Yeah.
Period. That is it. But again, I think if you don't just assume they're always the same and think that they can be separate, I feel like it might lead to some opportunities to have some storytelling that you wouldn't have expected if you just go, oh no, they're the same thing. So that's the only reason
Yeah.
why when we prep this and talked
So
about
I agree. I agree that they can very definitely be two separate things. Like I don't disagree with you there. I just think that Neo's is just as he gets shot.
right.
Like I think that moment is his all hope is lost moment.
And this is a great example of why arguing about stories is so dumb. Because the reality is, at the end of the day, all stories are subjective.
Yeah.
I'm 100% right on the Matrix. 100%. There's no doubt that I'm 100% right. And I also know that you are 100% right on the Matrix because that's how you see it. And it's
every reader takes out of a story what they take out of a story.
Yep.
And that is it is what they take out of the you can't tell them they take something else out of the story. They're not like you can argue about these things and talk about these things, and maybe I'll go, that's interesting. I could take that out of the story too. But then I've taken it out of the story because you've taken it out of the story, and I'm like, that's an interesting point, and I can incorporate and so on.
Right.
But it's still like what I've taken out of the story is what I've taken out of the story.
Right. And why this is important for writers to understand is because it's hard to grasp that you're not in control.
Yeah.
Writers think they're in control of what we're doing to our readers. And for a large extent, we are. How we construct our sentences, the verb choices we use, how we disseminate information through the scene, all of that. We're very much in control of that. This is the reason why testing with beta readers is so important, because you need to get that type of feedback. So like, let's say I'm writing the Pied Piper story. And, we all know the Pied Piper, village overrun by rats. Magic dude shows up with a flute, says, pay me money and I'll get rid of rats. They say, okay. He plays his flute, takes them to the ocean. They drown. He comes back. They won't pay him. So he plays his flute and he takes all their children to the ocean and he drowns them.
Yeah.
Now, you can, if I ask, and I use that in my classes. That's one of the things that I use in my classes. And I'll say, what is the theme? Yeah. Some people will go, oh, the theme is you shouldn't be greedy. And they're right. But other people will go, the theme is you shouldn't break your promises. And they're right.
Yeah.
To me, I fall on the don't break your promises. I don't feel like it has anything to do with greed. That doesn't make any sense to me. They promised they were going to do something. They didn't keep the money out of greed. They kept it because they promised to do something. And then they were just like, but I'm not going to have any consequences for not following through with this. Yeah. So I'm going to keep my money and not do it. Again, neither way is wrong. But here's why it's important for writers. What you have to do is when you get that feedback, you have to go, am I cool with both? Is it cool with me that you take that greed is bad and you take that breaking your promises is bad or that? And if the answer is yes, then you're good. Now, if you write that story, if you write the Pied Piper and you go give it to beta readers, and people are like, oh yeah, no, I think, half the people are like, I think it has to do with greed. It's just don't be greedy. And the other half is child prostitution is bad. And then you're like, that's when you're like, how did you get that? Well, this section made me feel that. And so maybe you wrote those sections wrong. Like you didn't think that you were doing that, but they are not wrong. If
No.
they, if half the people are like, oh yeah, no, definitely it's a story about the perils of child prostitution. It's evil and bad and wrong. That's what you were trying to convey. Then that's what your story conveys. Whether you meant it to or not, that is fact. And
Yeah.
so now you have to either go, okay, you know what? I'm cool with that. I'm cool with that as a moral lesson. Or you go, ooh, yeah, that has nothing to do with what I'm talking about. Um, Let me change that. Let me figure out what were the lines, what were the paragraphs, what were the scenes that made you feel
Yeah.
that, and then adjust those. My favorite story was from kind of in this light. One of the very first groups that I did in my house years and years and years ago, one of the girls read it was his opening chapter of a fantasy piece. And
Mm.
I go last in my critique groups. I let everybody go first, and then I kind of am the cleanup man to try and catch anything that they miss. And so it went around the room, and everybody critiqued her piece, and it got to me, and I was like, oh. And it was a scene where it was a brother and sister on a farm, and they're just doing farm chores. It was just kind of a setup chapter. And I went, oh, so brother and sister are boning. And she was like, what? The author. So what? What? No, what? And everybody's like, oh my God, I'm so glad you said that. That's exactly what I thought they were doing. And like, yeah, look at like this is going to make every single person who reads this think, or at least the majority of them
Yeah.
think that these two are boning. And she's like, no, no. She was mortified. And I'm like, whether you meant to do it or not, that is what the story
That's
does.
that's what's on.
So
Yeah, and that's what I call the unintended fee.
yeah,
And you do need to be cognizant.
well,
You
you
might
won't be
not mean to put this in the
right.
book, but it can feel like that to some percentage of readers. Now, if that percentage of readers is small, then you can be like, so be it. Those people have their own baggage and they're going to get that out of the book, and it's fine. But if
Or
that percentage is like 50 to 60%, you got
actually,
a
to me,
problem.
it's if it's 20%.
Yeah,
So at 20%, you're if or sorry, 25%, because at 25%, you're at a 3.5 out of 5 stars.
yeah,
So 25%, if 3 out of 10 feel something that is wrong, that I'm
yeah,
trying, not that they're wrong, that it's opposite of or different from what I was hoping they would feel, I'm going to
yeah,
adjust it. But here's the
yeah.
thing, even if it's only 1 out of 10, I will still look at that and go, can I tweak it just enough that's not going to affect anyone who got what I was doing, but then correct this one little thing? Like, because a lot of times it's, well, you use this one verb in this one paragraph, and that's why I felt that way. And it's like, well, what about this verb? Because it means the same thing,
Yeah.
as far as the painting of the picture that I'm trying to do. And they're like, oh yeah, no, no, I'd get it 100% on that one. I'm like, well, then I'll just change the verb. Like, and then I don't have to worry
Anyway,
about losing that percentage of the people. So
anyway,
yeah, it
um,
depends on what you're doing.
yeah,
But you're
we're
right.
we're get,
Sometimes I go, yeah, I don't care about you. Like you're such a small percentage of,
yeah,
whatever. And you get this a lot in writers groups because it's like, you know, I'll have a romance writer or a Western writer go, oh yeah, no, I didn't understand this whole thing because of this. And I'm like, anyone who reads fantasy, like I had the story that I use a lot is I had one of my first critiques was this woman, and she said, I don't understand why all the guards in the city are wearing chainmail. That sounds stupid to me. And I was like, you know how cops wear bulletproof vests? And she's like, yeah, they need to. I'm like, yeah, chainmail is their bulletproof vest back then. They're cops. Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, that's because you don't read fantasy. It's good. I just ignore you. Like, I don't care.
I've had one or two people critique me that are like, I don't get this magic thing, and I'm like, how much fantasy do you read? Oh, I don't. I've never read any fantasy. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, my only
Um,
2-star review on
I
Goodreads.
I appreciate your commentary, but
My only 2-star review on Goodreads is a long review. I mean, because he actually made a fan base trashing everything he reads.
yeah,
He's one of those people.
yeah,
But the first line, and I haven't memorized the rest of it, but I memorized the first line. I don't like fantasy, but I'm like, well, then you have no opinion that matters to me
Yeah,
at all.
exactly.
Like, why are you reviewing a fantasy book?
Anyway,
So,
we're getting way, way, way off
yes.
track.
Well, that's why I was
Okay.
bringing it
Yeah.
over here. All right. So, anything else about the breaking point that you want to say, or
No,
did I think we
no.
got that? All right. So, how can we make our climax? And we probably finish on here. We make this the
Yeah.
climax of this podcast. What do you think are some things to think about that would make your climax more powerful?
The lower you take the character in the all hope is lost moment, the higher the climax. If you can make them this big, it's a roller coaster ride. The higher the more dramatic the drop, the more epic the ride, everything. It's about gradients.
Yeah. The way I like to describe it is your story is, the center of your story is a line. And so if you have little cool moments and little drastic, bad moments and little good moments and little drastic moments, really your story has this much range. Whereas if your highs are just like really amazing and then your lows are like, oh my God, we're all gonna die, and then your highs, now your story has this range. And so if you can keep that level of ups and downs through your story, and your all hope is lost moment is the lowest of those, then your climax, which should be the highest of those, that emotional range is going to be amazing. And it really is that simple. It has to start from the beginning. Now, of course, in the beginning, our highs and lows are going to be smaller. But as we go through, they're going to get higher and lower and higher and lower and higher and lower. And we're going to build that up so that it has this massive impact on it. There's one other thing that's also important. Not only do you have to have that emotional range, you have to make the reader care about the character from jump. If the reader doesn't care about the character, if it doesn't care about what the character loves, what the character hates, what the character's motivations are, then it doesn't matter about your emotional range. They're never going to care.
The reader has to care about the character so that they care about the stakes, because the stakes are communicated through the character. The stakes, the climax matters because it matters to the character, right? This world doesn't exist. It doesn't matter if it comes to an end. It matters to the character. And because the character cares, it matters to the reader.
Yep. It's why one of the things that I teach is it's not about the how or the what. It's about the why and the effect. You have to write the how and the what. You have to write how did I open the door and what did I do when I went into the room. You have to. The story doesn't exist without the hows and the whats. Nobody cares. Nobody cares how I opened the door, even if it might have been cool. Nobody cares what I did in the room, even though it might be cool. They care why am I opening that door? What effect does going into that room have upon me? It's always the whys and the effects. You must thread that in from the very beginning because that's the motivation, that is the desire of your character, and you connect that to the reader, and now the reader cares as they go through it. So as the stakes rise and fall and rise and fall and rise and fall, that emotional range, I actually give a crap. So I feel great when we're high and I feel horrible when we're low. So that when we do get to that all hope is lost moment, it is actual all hope is lost for me. Because I'm actually like, oh no, this is terrible. But if I don't care, it's like, yeah, whatever. Let them die. I don't care. Not that they'll ever get to that point, because again, we just talked about 800,000 books hitting the market every single year.
They'll just put the book down.
Yeah, there's gonna put the book down. There's so much out there that if you cannot keep them, you're not keeping them. They're just not coming back. And that's what you're competing against. You're competing against that white noise. You're not competing against other authors.
Actually, I want to ask you one last question.
Okay. I'm interested.
What is the impact of the climax on your protagonist?
Okay. So this is on our list. For those that don't know, we have picked up this season. You might have noticed a change in format and icon, what are they called, thumbnails and all of that. We've picked up a producer, and she's doing a fabulous job of just keeping us organized and giving us topics and setting everything up. And literally, we were always improving every single month, but starting in January, we are improving like never before. So she gives us a list of questions. We kind of go over it ahead of time. And we read this question. It's like, what is the impact of the climax on your protagonist? And we both just kind of looked at each other and was like, everything?
Everything.
Like, it's the story? Like, so
If you can't figure that out, you haven't written the climax.
if you can't figure that out, maybe a career in acting
Yeah.
where you just say
Maybe
what other people have written and make it look good. I mean, I definitely have a face for radio, so I'm not going to be an actor anytime soon. But yeah, all actors have to do is look really pretty and cool as they deliver lines that someone else wrote.
You say that, but I'm going to push back because I watched Devil Wears Prada with Meryl Streep, and I know for a fact that her monologue to Andy, where she goes like, "You wear that blue sweater that you picked out of a box," that whole monologue. I know for a fact that in the script it was supposed to be angry because in the book it's written as angry. But Meryl Streep was like, no, no, no. And she delivered it in this flat, deadpan. That was just.
Yeah. Again, she looked pretty and cool delivering what someone
But
else
she
wrote.
changed the. Yeah. But she changed the way it was delivered
Yeah.
because it was not written like.
Right. And I love picking on actors. I'm friends with a lot of actors. And there are some brilliant, right? I mean, Ben Browder, the guy from Farscape and SG1, he took over after Richard Dean Anderson left. He's a friend of mine. And he's a writer. He wrote several of the episodes of Farscape. Brilliant guy. Love hanging out with him. He's also, now that he's older in his career, he's doing a lot more directing. That takes a lot of mental capacity as opposed to just standing there. But he also looked cool and pretty delivering lines that other people wrote.
No,
I mean, he's a
100%.
gorgeous
And I
man.
mean, Meryl Streep looks fantastic delivering
Right.
it. I'm not. She doesn't.
Right. So
But she,
I like
like
picking on actors.
some actors do make a material difference to the work.
Certainly. Oh yeah, 100%. And that comes down to, the writers do the best they can, and we think like this really has impact, and maybe it does. And then somebody else can look at it with fresh eyes and go, okay, yeah, this does, but man, if it was delivered this other way. And then also there is a difference in painting on a reader's imagination versus actually showing them the thing. So, something written is never going to have the same impact. Not that it's better or worse, because it can definitely be better impact or worse impact, but I'm never saying it's just going to be different than watching a person on screen. I mean, we just talked about in the last couple episodes that line from Randy from My Name is Earl. You read that and you're like, this guy can't write. This is horrible. And then you watch Randy do it on screen and you're like, oh my God, that's hilarious. It's just, it's everything that it should be. So, yeah. But yeah, so we're picking on our producer here. And in this
she's
last line,
wonderful. Like she's
she's amazing.
fantastic.
She is
But
100%.
that last question was just funny.
Yeah, we both just kind of deadpan looked at each other like, what do we do with that? So yes, now you guys got a little inside back office chatter about what's going on behind the scenes at Releasing Your Inner Dragon.
And I think that is a great note on which to end this episode.
Bye.
Greetings, enchanting wordsmiths and dreamweavers. It's Marie Mullaney, your companion on this fantastical journey of creation. If our podcast has been a guiding star in your literary sky, please like and subscribe and share our episodes with your fellow creators and help support our endeavor to explore the boundless universe of writing. Your support is the magic that keeps our world turning. For a deeper understanding of the topics we've discussed, head over to Just in Time Worlds on YouTube. It is a treasure trove where fantasy meets history and science. Every Tuesday, you'll find new videos that delve into the intricacies of world building, drawing from our rich real-world history. Whether you're a writer, a role player, or just a fantasy enthusiast, Just in Time Worlds offers unique insights that will enrich your perspective. Check it out and join the journey of crafting incredible worlds.
If you are ready to take your writing to the next level and work with a group of highly motivated, dedicated writers who are all working to not only improve their writing, but improve your writing, plus you get to work with me on a weekly basis, then I'll encourage you to check out writersroom.us. This is a website that I have created that I really wish I had 30 years ago. It's everything a writer needs to become a better writer. Not only do we do weekly critique sessions, both from other members as well as me, we have daily writing sessions, I do monthly classes, Q&As, we have activities, I do all sorts of learning exercises, such as I do a quarterly writing prompt contest, and just tons and tons and tons of things. So if you're ready to get serious about your writing and you want to actually finish that novel and have a chance of it being published, then I encourage you to head on over to the Writer's Room and join me there. And as a special promotion for listeners of Releasing Your Inner Dragon, I'll go one step more. If you would like to get 50% off for 3 months, reach out to me. There's a million ways you can do that. You can do it through starvingwriterstudio.com, drakeu.com, any of my social medias such as LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, X, whatever. Reach out to me, say that you would like to check out the Writer's Room for 50% off, and I will send you a link that will allow you to do just that. So hopefully you're ready to start getting serious about writing, and I'll see you in the Writer's Room.